on my end, right, on the smaller scale, doing a lot of these older airplanes, we're helping a lot of startups in lots of, you know, jurisdictions outside of North America, right? Startups that effectively are starting with very, very little capital and are looking to start a regional business of some type, or they've got some type of specialized transport that they need, and they don't necessarily have the money to go off and spend 30 or 40 million dollars on a new airplane, but they can spend 45,000 or 60,000 a month on a lease. So that's where we come in.
That's really fascinating. Thanks, Tony. In the aviation industry, when it comes to leasing, there's an obsession with water, apparently, because we have these things called wet leases, and we have dry leases, and we have moist leases.
Okay.
And no other industry in the leasing finance world uses water, so I don't know why that is. But could you explain for the listeners maybe a little bit about the differences between these leases, wet leases, dry leases, moist leases?
Well, we work, and I've been working exclusively on dry leases. And dry leases is effectively I'm leasing you an airplane, and once the airplane is in your care and control, you've got complete operational jurisdiction on your aircraft, right? A wet lease is when I operate the aircraft on the behalf of a third party. So they're effectively paying me a larger rate, and in that rate, there, everything is basically taken care of. The pilots are taken care of. The aircraft maintenance is taken care of. Everything. All you have to do is basically tell me where to fly and where I'm picking up passengers and dropping off passengers. The other leasing, I'm not very familiar with the other one that you mentioned, because I've only seen sort of wet ACMI leases and the dry leases that we provide, right?
Yeah, I think moist is just somewhere in between, right?
Well,
yeah.
the nice thing about leasing, right, is that a lease is based around the contract, and you can just basically structure the contract any which way you want. The only thing you have to be careful about is that if you are operating the aircraft, you have to have an AOC or a base of operations, right? You have to be certified, and you have to have those aircrafts on your certificate to be able to fly them out. And then once you fly them to other parts of the world, then there's other complications with pilot licenses and all kinds of other things, and insurance for certain jurisdictions, because you're going into some parts of the world that might be a little more risky and stuff. So there is some work to do, but we don't have an operator certificate anymore. Therefore, we can't offer wet leases. So for us, it's very simple. It's on a dry lease basis exclusively.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So the other thing too is, in some instances, the engines may be leased separately from the aircraft itself. Could you explain a little bit about, is that in all instances or just in some, and how that works?
Okay, so probably the easiest way to envision this, okay, is that we look at an aircraft as a complete piece of machinery, right? We look at it as a flying device and stuff, but if you really break down the aircraft into its major components, right? You've got the airframe, which is the biggest part of it because it's the structure of the aircraft. But then the other high value components are the engines, like you mentioned, the landing gear, the APU, engines, landing gear, APU, and then you might have other components that, from time to time might fail, and you might need to lease something. But engines are one of those items that are, very, very currently leased on the market, and people are making like big dollar on the engines, because let's say, for example, you go out on the market, let's say, perfect example, the CRJ 200 right now, right?